So I suggest that if you have a wine glass, good. I would keep a hand on the glassware. They're light. I also, I made these nails. Actually, my 8-year-old painted them with red nail polish. That's blood on the nail. And I'll throw things out in the audience, and we'd made hundreds of these before someone was like, so what are you planning on doing with those? I thought I probably shouldn't throw those into the audience. Maybe a nail gun would work. So now we have these, and they're quite light. Do you practice run? Everybody, hands on your glass. God, y'all pros. We're gonna have to work on that. Yeah, I write steamy and perverse thrillers. Some of you will love them a lot. You know who you are. Some of you will not. I used to write a column for the Oregonian that was, I stopped maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a weekly column that was sort of nostalgic and sweet and bittersweet sometimes, but I still feel like Heartsick, which was my first thriller, should have come with a warning label for the people who love that column, because some of them were quite shocked. And a lot of people asked me when Heartsick came out. I had published other books before then that were humor books for the most part, illustrated, like point of purchase humor books, like at Pottery Barn, where they have like a book next to the cash register, like that kind of thing. But I had never done anything quite like the thrillers. And when it came out, people asked me, like, what happened to you? Was it recently, was it a child? Or, because and, you know, I blame it mostly on Nancy Drew books, which I read so voraciously that I actually walked to school reading the book, like I was that kid. Like, I'm lucky to be alive, because I would not even pause, you know, in intersections. I would just keep walking. And I read them underneath the table during school. Like, it took me 4 years to learn long division. I remember, I swear to God, I remember distinctly looking up, like, 4th grade and seeing, like, long division on the blackboard and having no fucking idea what that was at all. You know, like, we've been talking about it all year. It's just nothing. And thinking, well, I'm just going back to reading the book. I was also a fan of Trixie Belden books. Oh, yeah, sister. And her dungarees. Trixie Belden, #1, The Secret of the Old Mansion. You might remember, she's somehow like training, like she's like the assistant to the local doctor. And he teaches her about how to treat a copperhead wound. And then her little brother, serendipitously enough, is attacked by a copperhead snake. And she goes through the points, you know, where you slice open the wound, and then you tourniquet it, you slice it open, and then you suck the venom out. But you're careful to make sure there aren't sores in your mouth, because then you absorb the venom. And I noted this. It's something that would be very important, right? And I wanted to be in the position that Trixie Belden was, where she would save, where I would save someone. And I didn't have a little brother, but I had a cousin. And we were in Texas visiting our grandparents. One of those houses where sort of subdivision, and then it ends and it's just desert. And I was like, Jessica, want to go for a walk? And I walked her around this very treacherous terrain, like hoping that a copperhead would attack her so that I could save her. Like, it was beautiful ultimately. So my mind has always been a little different. And I was pregnant with my daughter Eliza, who is now 8. And I, as I said, had been writing humor books, and I came up with this idea for this thriller. And at the time, I was actually working on a Nancy Drew related project, which was Confessions of a Teen Sleuth, which was Nancy Drew as an old woman looking back on her life. It was a parody. It involved all the kind of teen sleuths that we know. and Cherry Ames, who I always loathed. Do you guys remember her? She was the nurse. Yeah. She didn't solve crimes, which was her problem. But in every book, she'd have a different job. You know, like Cherry Ames, cruise ship nurse. Cherry Ames, private duty nurse. She couldn't hold down a job. But I incorporated all of them into this parody. And I had a contract to do this. Like, I'd sold it on a proposal. And, you know, on the 20 pages in the phone call. And then it was like they gave me money and then they wanted it. And I immediately became really interested in doing something else. The hot, sexy book, right, over here. And I started writing Heartsick, which was the first thriller in this series. And these books, this is number 6, and they are all essentially this twisted love story between a detective and a serial killer. And she has been in and out of jail and the psych ward. One of the problems in writing this kind of thing is that if she doesn't get caught occasionally, the detective starts to look really bad at his job. But if she's caught, that's not as much fun. So I've got to get her in and out of prison. These are the things that I think about. So I'm going to read a couple of pages with sound effects. Testing. In this scene, this is Let Me Go. It's the most recent of these books. And this book, it's Halloween weekend in Portland. And many of the earlier books, by the way, there are scenes in Hillsboro. So, you know.
Like that.
Nothing terribly bad even happens in Hillsboro. I think you get honors in it. I'm embarrassed. I'll kill some people on the way home.
We have serial wine drinkers.
Right, you know, I love like doing an event surrounded by bottles of wine. I find great comfort in that. So in this scene, Archie, who's our detective hero, is at home, and Gretchen Lowell, who is, she's the serial killer who's beautiful and charismatic, like they are. It's Halloween, and she shows up in costume because she has a sense of humor, like all the best serial killers do. All right. It's not as funny when you're reading it in the book, but it'll be funny tonight, and that's okay. Okay. He saw her foot first, a white pump planted on his threshold. Then each step revealed more of her, like a curtain pulling back on a stage. Gretchen Lowell in his doorway. Archie felt a rush of feeling, seeing her in person, that made his throat go dry. Or maybe it was just the painkillers kicking in. She was wearing an old-fashioned white nurse's uniform, white stockings, and low white pumps. Her blonde hair was pulled back neatly, and a nurse's cap sat on top of her head. Over the dress, she was wearing a dark blue thigh-length cape with 4 brass buttons that fastened at the neck. An aside, I based this entire outfit on the Nurse Barbie from the 60s. You remember it? Like, that, literally, it's all based on the Nurse Barbie outfit. There's humor to be found. She tossed one side of the cape back over her shoulder, revealing its red lining, and also the fact that her white dress was splattered with blood. Archie aimed his weapon at the center of her face. "There you are," he said. She gave him a ravishing smile and sauntered forward toward him, hips swinging. Archie fought to keep his weapon trained at her head, even as he darted his eyes from the sights to take in what was coming at him. She was covered in blood. Arcs of arterial spray decorated the dress from the hem to the collar. As she got closer, he saw a fine spray of red on her neck, chest, and cheek. Archie's mind went to his protection detail outside, and his stomach clenched. He had been a fool to tell Henry that she only killed when she had to. She had killed again, and she had done it with relish. "Don't worry," Gretchen said, waving a French manicured hand at the blood. Her eyes were bright. "It's fake." Archie lowered the gun from her head, down her neck to her chest, where the white dress was spattered with red. Now that he looked more closely, the color of the blood was a bit too orange, a bit too shiny. Ginger was a Welsh corgi. Ginger put her ears back and trotted over next to Archie. "You're in costume," Archie said slowly, flabbergasted. "Tell me the truth," Gretchen said, frowning and holding her arms out to her sides to display her ensemble. "Too slutty?" Sometimes Archie was certain that she actually was quite insane. "Your sense of humor escapes me," he said. Gretchen bit her lip and stepped toward him, and Archie raised his weapon and braced it with both hands. She didn't stop. He didn't lower the weapon. Gretchen growled. Ginger growled. Could have been either. Ginger growled. Gretchen snapped her fingers, and Ginger's ears flattened, and she darted off toward the couch. Gretchen's eyes never wavered from Archie. She kept coming. When she stopped, her forehead was directly in front of the barrel of the gun. Archie released the safety and curled the first joint of his finger around the trigger. They were both perfectly still. He could hear Rachel breathing. His trigger arm ached. If he flinched or coughed, the gun would fire. Gretchen tilted her head slightly, her large blue eyes on him. Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against the barrel of the gun. Archie could feel her pushing, the pressure of the grip against his palm. His finger was stiff around the trigger. He felt his elbow weaken. Gretchen smiled at him. His elbows ached. She leaned her skull harder against the barrel, lifting her heels off the floor, putting her weight behind it. He could see the tendons in her pale neck tense. Archie was backed against the bar. There was nowhere to go. He wasn't going to shoot her. They both knew that. If he did, Susan would be lost. Archie bent his elbow and drew it back to his waist. Gretchen stumbled forward, catching herself by putting her palms on his chest. A bright red ring, like a target, lingered on her forehead where the barrel of his gun had been. Archie's weapon was at his side, now directed at Gretchen's midsection. She kept her hands on him. They were so close that he could feel her breath on his face. The gun was the only thing between them. Archie's cramped finger still on the trigger. Gretchen inhaled and closed her eyes, like she was remembering some long-forgotten smell. Then she opened her eyes and fixed them on him. "It's good to see you," she said gently. Archie could feel a layer of sweat between the grip of the gun and his hand. Gretchen's eyes traveled over his face. Then she reached up and threaded her fingers through his hair. "Look at all this gray hair," she said. Despite himself, Archie felt his body relax under her touch. A gentle, tingling sensation spread across his skin. His muscles loosened. "You've aged me," he said. And he took his finger off the trigger of the gun. She knew the moment he'd done it. Maybe he glanced down and relaxed his shoulders, or she felt his hand shift between their bodies, but she knew. And her free hand was there between them, moving the gun out of his hand. He let her take it. He didn't care. He wasn't going to shoot her. Not now. Not today. She set the gun on the bar behind him. "You need to take better care of yourself," she said. That's it, but I do, since I have all these severed body parts, some of them quite soft. Here's a severed tongue. They'll stick to the wall if you don't catch them. Nice, that was good reflexes. I'm impressed by that. Yeah, it's an ear.
It's great.
And wait, a couple eyeballs, and one more tongue, and we'll call it good, okay? This is my favorite, it's the tongue.
Well, we're playing.
All right, thank you very much, everybody.